Okay, thanks very much. Senator McKenzie, you have the call for another 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like the Chair back at the table, please. I want to move to the BCG strategic review of Australia Post, announced obviously by Minister Fletcher and former Minister Cormann as shareholder ministers, stating it would, and I quote, inform the incoming chair and further informs the board's chief executive officer and would review Australia's Post strategy to operate as a sustainable and fit-for-purpose service provider for the longer term. The review was announced around your appointment as chair, wasn't it?
Correct.
So when was that exactly?
Late November.
Exactly.
I'll have to refer to...
Someone could get the exact date, please?
I understand, Senator McKenzie, it was commissioned in October 2019, but I don't know the exact date.
Okay. We've got enough boffins with folders here to find the exact dates, I'm sure. So if we could find both the appointment of the chair and the date and also the review date, that would be very, very helpful. I want to understand why the review has not been released publicly.
Senator, may I step in on that one?
Well, I would like the chair to answer, give me his perspective.
The review was not conducted for Australia Post. It was conducted for the shareholders. When I was first invited to join the board by the Minister, he clearly advised me that they were going to take an independent review of Australia Post.
So which minister,
I'm sorry, yes. Minister Fletcher.
Okay.
And it was I think there was a specific concern about the long-term financial sustainability of Australia Post in light of the trends that we've spoken of for some time, declining letters, etc., and profitability had been declining for some time. And he advised me that they were going to get BCG to do this review, and I advised him that while it was being done by them for the shareholders, we would support the review in all manners possible and give whatever information, and I made that a significant priority within Australia Post, that this wasn't something we would keep at arm's length, but we would try and provide whatever information we could to, enhance the review.
So,
but it wasn't for us.
Yes, but you're actively involved in the review process.
We weren't doing the review, but we were certainly actively providing the information they were seeking to allow them to undertake
through
the proper review.
Access to financial records,
or
whatever
statistical
they need.
Everything. So if I could go back to your earlier question, if that's
yes.
okay. I was appointed on the 14th of November.
Great.
And the
review...
And the review commenced about that time.
I think that was announced on the 1st of November.
Right.
So I assume it didn't start prior to that. So when your involvement in the review process was as helpful as possible?
Yes.
So have you read the final report of the review?
No, I haven't read the final report of the review.
Have you read the draft of the final report?
Well, we've read a draft. We've been shown a draft that was shared with us. Whether that was the final draft, whether there were changes made, don't know, because we haven't seen the final review.
Right. So when did you get a copy of the final draft?
Again, take that on notice. It would have been early February, late February.
Yep. Okay.
About that period.
All right. That would have had a lot of helpful things, I guess, if we're looking at the future sustainability of Australia Post. Have you lifted anything from it anyway?
It's not
some
really
of the findings?
appropriate for anybody from Australia Post to speak to the contents of that report.
I'm
Senator
asking an
McKenzie.
independent agency, Minister,
yes,
a question.
But the report is the property of the shareholder departments, not Australia
I'm
Post.
not asking
so it's
for the
inappropriate
report.
for
I'm
all
not
the
asking
employees
for
of
the
Australia
report.
Post to speak
I'm
to its
not asking
contents.
for the report, Minister. I'm asking an independent agency if there were any helpful suggestions in a document they may have read in February that they've chosen to implement in their organisation.
What BCG did was twofold. They shared their experiences of postal services around the world. The sort of options that they have been taken up, many dealing with the same fundamental patterns in the marketplace, with declining letters and increasing volumes. And what I recall was that they identified a number of potential options of actions that could be taken. Not aware of any option being recommended. In fact, what I saw had no recommendations, just simply said if you did this, this would happen. We have not taken up those specifics at all. We did some work following that with McKinsey's to help us in preparing our own work.
Yep.
Are waiting for any decision that might come from government, and that's what's been driving us to this point in time.
So the McKinsey piece, is that completed?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, and you're I'm assuming you're not standing still waiting for this review to be released. You're getting on with the business of running AusPost.
That's right. I understand.
And are you using the McKinsey piece to inform your strategic direction?
We are certainly using information they provided to help us come to conclusions on different matters, how we could perform our task more effectively and efficiently in particular, and the issues of automation in our depots, the sort of all the equipment we use. What are other postal services around the world using? To what extent can they be utilised to become more efficient in the way we deliver our services? And they were inputs into what was defined as our corporate plan last year, which we put forward as a draft in June, as per normal, and finally approved in August.
Okay. I know you've read a draft in February of the review.
Yes.
Mr. Boyes, have you read a final draft or the final report?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm not sure what version of the report that I read, but I have read one that's labelled draft.
And was that after February?
No.
There's nothing later than February? And to your knowledge, has anyone in your organisation read a draft report of the review of a later iteration?
I'd have to take that on notice, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, we received a report that we understand was in the later stages of the completion by BCG, and that's all
and
we know.
your McKinsey work is based on that reading of that
the
report?
McKinsey report McKinsey didn't see the BCG report.
No, I know McKinsey didn't. You did, and then you commissioned McKinsey's.
So
when was McKinsey commissioned to do their piece of work?
I'll have to take that question on notice.
Okay.
Senator, McKinsey piece of work is an independent piece of work that Australia Post commissioned ourselves.
Yes. No, I recognise that.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in the timing. So did the draft report you see, when you mentioned automation, suggest cutting jobs, cutting services, divesting your parcels section?
I don't believe it's appropriate for me to comment on a report for government. I think government has claimed a public immunity claim on that report. I don't think it's appropriate that I comment on that.
So you can't tell the Senate whether the draft review that you looked at suggested cutting jobs, services or divesting of your parcels division?
So Senator McKenzie,
I've got
Mr.
one
Boyes
more
has
question.
highlighted the fact that a claim was made and accepted by the committee. So please continue.
Thank you, Chair.
Did the report indicate that services and deliveries to rural and regional and remote Australians are loss-making and that they should be reduced or cut
Senator,
to ensure the sustainability of Australia Post?
I don't think it's appropriate that I comment. That was a report commissioned
I'll
by
rephrase
government.
the question.
And
Are the AusPost's services to rural, regional and remote Australia loss-making?
Services to rural and Australia Post in our annual report outlines the cost of our community service obligations. The cost of the community service obligations, which includes things like a universal stamp price across the country, last year was reported, I think, at $391 million was the cost of our community service obligations. In that, the substantial amount was regional and rural Australia. I don't have the number off the top. If somebody's got an annual report, Sylvia?
Someone should have your annual report.
I've got it. Thank you, Mike.
And if you can make this the last question of this bracket, thanks, Senator McKenzie.
So, while you're getting that annual report, Mr. Boys, is it your evidence that the services and deliveries in regional, rural and remote Australia for Australia Post are a loss-making enterprise, part of your enterprise?
I'll
yes
come
or
back to
no,
that. Page
fine.
139 of the Australia Post annual report for 2020 sets out the cost of our CSO obligations. The cost of providing the CSO for 2019-2020 is estimated at $393.3 million. The prior years was $392.2 million, including $201.6 million in rural and remote locations, which was up from 187. I will point out that that is the cost associated with our CSO. Australia Post now operates or has around 80% of its revenues coming from non-regulated sectors, predominantly in parcels, but also in financial services and other areas. So that is the cost of the regulated service and the community service obligation associated with that.
The financial services piece was a very successful outcome driven by the previous CEO,
Senator
Christina Holgate, wasn't
McKenzie.
it?
Please
Yes
answer
or
that
no?
question.
I'm waiting for the
Call
chair,
was-
sorry.
Finish your answer and then we go to Senator Kitching.
That's right. So the Banker Post refresh, which took place, was Australia Post has been doing financial services in regional and rural Australia for over 100 years.
No, I
is
know,
my
I'm from
understanding,
rural
so-
and regional Australia.
Yeah,
We used
so
to
am I.
only use the
Thank you.
Commonwealth Bank.
Yeah, thank you.
But thanks to the former CEO and Chair, I do note that you were nodding to my question,
Thank
that
you.
it was
Senator-
your former CEO who really
Senator
revolutionised
McKenzie, thank
financial
you.
service
Senator
provisions
Kitching,
for
you now have the call.
Auspost.